Kuzangpola, now we're going to be bringing you a short interview with the president of Druk Phuensum Tshogpa, Jigmi Y.Thinley. I would like to thank you so much for being here, sir, and giving us your time. Now, I'd like to start by asking you, why should people vote for Druk Phuensum Tshogpa?
For what we have done and accomplished. For one, people place their trust in their elected representatives, and they choose their own government in the hope that the government will fulfill their hopes and aspirations. These hopes, such hopes and aspirations, are normally reflected in the manifesto of the party. In our case, we had 153 pledges, of which only 3 remain unfulfilled. That is one reason. Second reason is change. People want change, and change without creating instability and problems in the country. And we have been able to bring in the biggest change. We managed the biggest change this country will ever go through, and that is the transition to democracy. I think we have done well on that account. And likewise, I think we have done well with respect to our promise to bring about equity and justice.
Now, sir, you talked about in an earlier press interview with the press, you said that change in leadership was the government's biggest challenge. Now, do you think that in the last 5 years, your government has been able to convince the people of the new system of governance?
I think we have. People were fearful of the change then, because they thought that the king was abandoning them. Bhutanese people are very loyal, and they revere their king. Every one of us does that. And so when democracy was to be ushered in, they felt that they were losing their king. But now they realize that what we have is a unique form of democracy. It's a constitutional democratic monarchy. His Majesty is there always to guide us. And so I think, having seen the way in which democracy has come in, how governance is being carried out, and the continuing role of His Majesty the King as the source of inspiration, unity and guide, I think the people have reconciled with the reality, which is very favorable, I think.
Now, I'd also like to ask you, even though the economic growth projected has been pretty impressive, when you look at it, there are still skeptics who feel that the actual picture is not as rosy as it is shown. Your comment?
Well, picture is what you see, not what you hear and what people write about. And what we know is that, everybody knows, is that our GDP has grown at a rate of almost 9% in the last 5 years. Our per capita income has almost doubled. Economic expansion has gone up to the level of 70%. And then again, I think a very good indicator is the revenue that the government earns, and that has gone up by over 100%. Even more interesting is the tax revenue, which is definitely a very good indicator of how the private sector, for instance, is faring. And that has gone up by 244%. According to the IMF, we were in 2012 the 4th fastest growing economy. And then again, poverty. Poverty has been reduced. Was the growth inclusive? Yes. Poverty has been reduced from 23% to 12%. And our aim now is to bring it down further to 5%. Ultimately, eradicating poverty altogether.
Now, talking about eradicating poverty is, of course, a very noble thing that you all have in mind. But then, how realistic is it? Do you think that we can eradicate poverty?
If we can bring down lower poverty from 23% to 12% in 5 years, I think there will be no difficulty, provided we have the same kind of government, same kind of governance, and the same kind of leadership to be able to bring it down to 5%. And definitely, we have no choice but to eradicate poverty by the year 2020, so that we will be well on our way, or rather we will have achieved self-reliance by then.
Now, moving on with our discussion, let me ask you about Druk Phuensum Tshogpa's foreign policy.
Well, the cornerstone of our foreign policy will always be relations with India. And in the last 5 years, we have done the very best that we can to deepen and strengthen our relations, indeed diversifying the content of our relations. And I'm happy to say that it has certainly deepened, and our relations are in an excellent shape right now. And I'm happy to say also that Bhutan has been able to achieve, this government has been able to achieve what it has in terms of the 10th five-year plan because of the tremendous generosity of India and the government of India and the people of India.
Nice. Now, I'd like to ask you, what would the Druk Phuensum Tshogpa, what would you all do if you all were differently if you all were elected a second time?
We will continue with the changes that we have brought in, consolidate democracy, consolidate and improve the various services that we have created and established, and then again, ensure that we will be well on our way to achieving self-reliance by the year 2020, eradicating poverty by then.
Yes.
We will definitely aim to achieve full employment, going beyond the 2.1%, which is among the lowest in the world today, and then diversifying the economic base of our country so that it becomes more sustainable and less vulnerable to external shocks.
Nice. Now, in the 2008 elections, there was a sort of divide between communities, some instances where there was divide between communities and all that. What did the DPT learn from, what lessons did the DPT learn from then?
Well, one thing we learned, that what we did then was the right thing. We worked very hard to ensure that families were not divided, that the electoral process did not create division among the people. We worked very hard, but despite that, things did happen. And now, from the lessons that we have learned, one of the things that I initiated was to have a meeting with the heads of the various parties and to agree that we must engage in a campaign that is based on mutual respect for each other, believing and knowing that each of us has entered this process with the same beliefs, same aspirations, and the same convictions.
Nice. Now, I'd like to ask you about the education city. Why did the government spend so much money and is spending still so much money on the education city when there is still a lot more to be done in the tertiary education sector?
Well, Education City is all about expanding tertiary education here in Bhutan, bringing to Bhutan the highest quality of educational institutions to provide their services here in Bhutan. I don't know whether we are spending any money on the Education City as such.
Nice.
Because the Education City is something that is being undertaken through a partnership between the DHI and external investors.
Nice.
And it is a DHI project. DHI is an autonomous, investment arm of the government.
Nice.
And I know that they have not invested anything except to build the infrastructure leading to the space that has been allocated for the Education City.
Nice. But I'm sure that just the infrastructure also costs a lot of money.
Well, we have built thousands of kilometers of roads within the last 5 years. This is just one such road, and I think it's just a few kilometers.
Yes.
And then again, even if the Education City were not to be built there, something else would need to be built because we need space and infrastructure. Road is certainly an important element.
Last. Now, I have a final question for you. What is Druk Phuensum Tshogpa's vision for the youth of Bhutan?
Our vision for the youth of Bhutan is that, unlike a time when we thought the youth, or many people would speak of youth as a problem, as a challenge, our vision is one where we look at the youth of Bhutan, the 140,000 odd youth that are going to be entering the job market in the next 5 years as builders, as nation builders, as talents, as people who have the energy and the vitality to take this country forward. So our vision is to ensure that every one of them receives the opportunity to be able to contribute.
That's. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for giving us your time, Mr. Jigmi Y.Thinley. That was the president of Druk Phuensum Tshogpa, Jigmi Y.Thinley. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.